They thought the old man couldn't even hold a rifle anymore. "Stay inside," they told him. "We'll keep you safe." But when the night fell and the forest turned to fire, it was his hands, steady, silent, unshaken, that saved them all. 3 shots, 3 enemies down, and as dawn broke, he walked back to his cabin, laid down his rifle, and finally rested. So what if the man you think is too old to fight is the very reason you're still alive? The morning air in Pine Hollow, Montana, was thick with mist and the scent of pine sap, the kind that clung to your clothes and refused to leave. The forest canopy swallowed the light, turning everything beneath it into shifting shadows. Sergeant Cole Harris, 38, crouched low behind a fallen log, his sharp jawline glistening with sweat. A deep scar traced the left side of his neck, a souvenir from a roadside ambush in Kandahar years ago. The reason his eyes no longer blinked at the sound of gunfire. His men called him Iron Calm, though he hadn't felt calm in years. Behind him, Staff Sergeant Kyle Monroe, 29, adjusted his sniper scope. Monroe was tall, wiry, with sandy hair and the faint grin of a man who'd once dreamed of playing baseball before war taught him how to hit different targets. He'd lost his brother in Mosul, and every mission since then felt like unfinished business. To their right moved Corporal Jacob Reeves, just 24, the youngest of the team. His freckles and quick breathing gave away his nerves, though his trigger finger never hesitated. He carried humor like a shield, cracking quiet jokes that no one laughed at anymore. 2 others, Corporal Ethan Miller, a heavy-built medic with calm brown eyes, and Sergeant Ray Delgado, a stoic demolitions expert with salt and pepper stubble, formed the rest of Raven Squad. 5 men, ghosts among trees. Their mission was simple on paper: locate and eliminate a terrorist cell rumored to be hiding in the old timber camp. But Pine Hollow was more than a forest. It was a labyrinth. Every branch seemed to whisper, every root seemed to trip them on purpose. Cole raised his fist, signaling a halt. The men froze, kneeling in formation. Even the forest held its breath. He scanned the tree line through the haze, nothing but green. Then Monroe's voice came through the radio, low and steady. "Movement, 11 o'clock. 2 figures, maybe 3. Cole gave a nod. "Confirm before engaging." But before Monroe could respond, the forest cracked open with a single silenced shot. A mist of red bloomed against the moss. Monroe fell without a sound, his rifle slipping from his hands. Reeves screamed his name and dove toward him, but Cole's arm shot out, pinning him down. The sound of more movement echoed through the woods, soft, deliberate, circling. Cole's eyes widened as he realized the truth. They weren't the hunters anymore. Leaves shredded under the rain of bullets as the forest exploded into chaos. Cole Harris pressed his back against a tree, returning fire with controlled bursts, his mind racing. The last thing he saw before Monroe fell was the faint glint of a muzzle flash from the ridge. Professional, cold, deliberate. Whoever fired that shot knew exactly what they were doing. "Suppress the ridge," he barked. Reeves and Delgado opened up, their rifles spitting fire into the trees. Reeves's young face twisted with panic, freckles smeared with dirt and sweat. "They're flanking, Sarge!" he yelled, voice cracking. Miller, the medic, crawled to Monroe's side, his thick hands trembling slightly as he checked for a pulse he already knew wasn't there. "He's gone," Miller muttered, jaw tight. Cole's stomach clenched. He couldn't process it. Not yet. Not here. The radio on his vest crackled uselessly, spitting static. "Command, this is Raven. Request immediate air." Static swallowed his words. No response. The air was heavy with gunpowder and pine smoke, and somewhere ahead, the enemy's voices echoed in a foreign tongue, closer now. "We move!" Cole shouted, gripping Monroe's vest and hauling him onto his shoulder. The team fell back through uneven ground, bullets tearing bark inches from their faces. Reeves slipped in the mud but recovered, eyes wide with fear that hadn't yet learned to be shame. Delgado tossed a smoke grenade behind them, the gray cloud rolling like a curtain between life and death. They stumbled deeper into Pine Hollow's endless maze until the shots began to fade. By the time the forest fell silent again, the sun was bleeding out behind the tree line, staining the mist crimson. They collapsed near a narrow creek, their breaths ragged. Cole laid Monroe down gently, brushing dirt from the man's pale cheek. He whispered, You did good, brother. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the sound of rushing water filled the void. Then a distant rumble of thunder reminded them. Night was coming, and so were their hunters. Cole wiped the mud from his face, eyes scanning the fading light. We keep moving west, he said. There's got to be shelter somewhere beyond the ridge. But as they rose to continue, Delgado froze, holding up a hand. Wait, he whispered. Do you hear that? The men stopped, rifles raised. From somewhere beyond the trees came the faintest sound, a creaking hinge, like the slow opening of a wooden door. The faint creak they had heard led them through a thinning of trees until the forest opened to a clearing bathed in the last bruised light of evening. There, standing quiet against the falling mist, was a small wooden cabin, its walls gray with age, smoke curling lazily from a crooked chimney. Cole Harris raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. Eyes up, he whispered. The men moved in cautious formation, rifles aimed low, but ready. Reeves muttered, No one's supposed to live this deep. Before anyone could reply, the front door opened with a long sigh of hinges, and a figure stepped into the fading light. The man was Samuel Walker, late 60s, tall but slightly stooped, his frame still broad beneath a worn flannel shirt. His beard was silver white, neatly trimmed, and his eyes, sharp pale gray, had the steady calm of someone who had seen every version of fear and stopped being impressed by it. Deep lines cut across his sun-tanned face, each one a scar from a different decade. Evening, he said, his voice rough but not unfriendly. You boys look like you've been through hell. Cole lowered his rifle slightly, studying the old man. We're U.S. military, he said. We just need some water. We'll move on. Walker nodded once and gestured inside. Ain't much, but you're welcome to what's here. The cabin smelled of pine resin and old smoke. A single lantern flickered on a wooden table beside a stack of newspapers yellowed with time. Reeves drank from a tin cup greedily while Delgado checked the windows. Walker moved with slow deliberation, pouring water from a jug, his gaze drifting toward the sniper rifle slung over Cole's shoulder. That an M40? He asked. Cole hesitated, then handed it to him, Walker's weathered hands wrapped around it like an old friend. Haven't seen one of these since Da Nang, he murmured. The room fell silent. Miller glanced up from his bandaged arm. You served? Walker didn't look up. A lifetime ago, he said simply. Cole exchanged a look with Delgado. No one needed to ask further. There was something unspoken in the air, an authority that came not from rank but from experience. Outside, thunder rumbled again, low and distant, like artillery far away. Walker handed the rifle back and said quietly, You'll want to rest before night's over. This forest remembers who walks through it. As Cole looked into those gray eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that the forest wasn't the only thing with a memory. The fog came first, rolling in from the northern ridge like a tide of ghosts, followed by the kind of silence that only comes before chaos. The cabin's single lantern flickered weakly against the blackness pressing at its windows. Cole Harris stood outside on the porch, rifle raised, the damp air clinging to his uniform. His instincts screamed that something was coming. Behind him, Reeves paced nervously near the tree line, his breath quick and shallow, muttering half-formed prayers between clenched teeth. Before taking his post, the young soldier turned to the old man still sitting by the table. You should stay inside, sir, Reeves said, his tone respectful but edged with pity. We'll keep you safe. Just don't step outside. Walker's gaze lifted slowly, those pale gray eyes meeting his. You think safety's still out there, son? He asked softly. Reeves hesitated, unsure how to answer, then gave a faint nod and stepped into the fog. Delgado crouched by the doorway, checking the last of his grenades, his rough hands steady despite the faint tremor in his jaw. Miller tended to a shallow wound on his forearm, his broad frame hunched over, using what little medical supplies remained. Inside, Samuel Walker sat in the dim cabin light, elbows resting on his knees, listening. Not to the men, but to the forest. The way the branches moved, the faint crunch of leaves beneath distant boots. It spoke to him in a language only old soldiers understood. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost distant. "They're circling," he said. "2 groups, maybe 3. You've got less than a minute." Cole froze, then nodded. "Positions," he barked. Reeves dashed to the left window, Miller took the back door, and Delgado slipped into the dark side of the porch. Then the first flash came, a blinding burst followed by the crack of automatic gunfire. Bullets shattered the front window, spraying glass and splinters across the floor. Reeves screamed as a round grazed his shoulder but fired back wildly into the trees, his rifle lighting the fog with desperate bursts. Cole dove behind the railing, shouting coordinates, but it was impossible to see more than 20 feet ahead. "We're surrounded," Miller yelled. "No visual on their count." Cole's voice was hoarse. "Hold the line." The air reeked of cordite and burning wood as the cabin's walls splintered apart. In the chaos, Samuel Walker never moved from his chair. His eyes stayed fixed on the door, reflecting the flicker of gunfire. The noise outside, the shouts, the screams, the explosions, seemed to fade for him, replaced by another sound entirely, the echo of a memory. Rain falling on jungle leaves, the metallic click of a bolt sliding into place, a younger man's heartbeat pounding in his ears. His hand twitched once, then again. The past was clawing its way back through the years, dragging him toward it. Cole shouted for ammo. Reeves cursed through his pain, and Walker finally stood up. He looked toward the old rifle leaning against the wall, its barrel catching a glint of firelight. His voice, calm and cold, cut through the chaos like steel. "It's time to remember how to shoot." The storm broke loose in full fury, rain slashing through the fog, thunder rolling like distant artillery. The air was thick with the stench of gunpowder and burning pine as Cole Harris fired the last rounds of his rifle. Reeves was crouched behind a shattered window frame, blood seeping through the cloth on his shoulder, his youthful face pale but defiant. Miller dragged him back by the collar just as another burst of gunfire ripped through the front wall. "We're running out of ammo," Miller shouted, his deep voice cracking under strain. Delgado swore under his breath, pulling a small combat knife from his vest. His rifle had jammed, leaving him with nothing but steel and fury. Outside, dark figures emerged in the flickering light, terrorists moving in formation, disciplined and methodical, the way trained soldiers hunted prey. Cole saw them advancing through the mist and felt despair tighten his chest. They were done. There would be no extraction, no help, just 5 men fading into the dirt of Pine Hollow. Then, in the brief silence between bursts of gunfire, a single crack cut through the storm, a sharp, precise sound that made everyone freeze. One of the attackers jerked backward and fell. A heartbeat later, another shot. Another man dropped. The third came moments later, clean and merciless. The forest fell silent except for the rain. Cole turned toward the cabin window, where the flash of each shot had bloomed like lightning. Standing there, framed by smoke and firelight, was Samuel Walker. The old man's posture was rigid, steady, the barrel of the M40 rifle pressed snugly against his shoulder. His eyes, gray and unblinking, stared through the scope as if time itself had stopped obeying him. The years seemed to peel away, no longer the reclusive old man, but the soldier he had once been, precise and cold as the weapon in his hands. His breathing was slow, measured, each exhale a rhythm from another war. When he finally lowered the rifle, 3 bodies lay still among the trees. The rest of the attackers, spooked and scattered, melted into the forest. Walker opened the bolt, ejected the last casing, and whispered something only he could hear, perhaps a name, perhaps a prayer. Cole stared, speechless, as realization sank in. The battle was over, but not because of them. Outside, the rain eased into a soft drizzle. For the first time that night, silence returned to Pine Hollow, and with it, the strange calm of men who had just been saved by a ghost from another war. The first pale light of dawn crept through the shattered windows, turning the smoke and mist into ribbons of gold. The forest, moments ago alive with violence, now lay in haunting stillness. Sergeant Cole Harris stood outside the cabin, rifle slack in his grip, staring at the muddy clearing littered with fallen bodies. The rain had stopped, leaving everything drenched and glistening. Reeves sat against a tree, his shoulder freshly bandaged, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Miller moved between the wounded with quiet efficiency, the steady calm of a man who had learned to survive grief by keeping busy. Delgado scouted the perimeter, his heavy boots sinking into the mud as he confirmed what everyone already knew. The enemy was gone. Then came the distant thrum of rotor blades. 2 Black Hawk helicopters descended through the mist, their wind cutting through the morning haze. Fresh soldiers poured out, led by Lieutenant Marcus Boyd, tall and sharp-featured, uniform immaculate, the kind of officer who had never slept in the dirt. "Raven Squad, report," he called. Cole stepped forward, battered and weary. "We're all that's left, sir." Boyd looked around at the wreckage, then at the bullet holes scarring the cabin walls. "Where's your sniper support?" Cole's silence was the only answer. When he finally entered the cabin, it was empty. The rifle was gone, the chair pushed neatly under the table. Only a faint scent of gun oil and old smoke remained. On the table lay a folded photograph, a young man in jungle fatigues, grinning beside a helicopter, the words on the back barely legible. Lieutenant Samuel D. Walker, 1st Recon Sniper, Da Nang, 1969. Cole exhaled, realization dawning. Somewhere up in the hills, the old man was walking home. Hours later, when the helicopters lifted off, the camera of memory would have followed the faint trail of footprints leading away from the clearing, up toward a quiet ridge where a small wooden house stood hidden by the pines. Inside, Samuel Walker sat down on his simple cot, laid the M40 rifle beside him, and stared out the open window at the rising sun. The forest was silent again. For the first time in years, so was he. Weeks passed after the Battle of Pine Hollow. The forest healed quickly, its wounds swallowed by green, but for Sergeant Cole Harris, silence had never felt so heavy. He sat in the back of a military truck as it wound up the narrow mountain road, the same route they had taken that bloody night. When the vehicle stopped, Cole stepped out into the cool morning air. The cabin still stood, smoke rising faintly from its chimney, surrounded by wildflowers and quiet. Standing outside was Samuel Walker, wearing the same worn flannel shirt, his beard a little longer now, eyes calm as if the world could no longer startle him. Cole approached slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel. "You could have taken the medal," he said softly. Walker smiled, a thin, tired smile that deepened the lines on his sunburned face. "Son, medals don't make peace. Silence does." Behind them, a black government SUV idled. A major from the Department of Veterans Affairs, a woman in her 40s named Major Karen Ellis, stepped out. She was tall, blonde, and carried herself with quiet authority. Her eyes softened when she looked at the old man. "Mr. Walker, the president himself signed the commendation. They'd like to host a ceremony in D.C. Walker's gaze turned toward the forest, his voice steady. "Tell them the forest's my crowd. The wind's my anthem." Karen hesitated, then nodded respectfully. Cole chuckled quietly, a rare sound from a man who had forgotten how to laugh. The major left the folder on the porch, beside the neatly folded flag the team had once found there, and drove away. The 2 men sat in silence, sharing a thermos of black coffee as sunlight broke through the clouds. For a long moment, there were no words, only birdsong and the hum of morning. "You ever think about the war?" Cole finally asked. Walker exhaled, eyes on the horizon. "Every day, but not the killing, the saving." When Cole left, he turned back once. Walker stood in the doorway, framed by light, a quiet sentinel in his sanctuary of peace. Years later, Cole returned again, older, slower, wearing civilian clothes. The cabin was empty, only the flag remained on the porch and the rifle on the mantel, polished one last time. Cole smiled faintly. "You finally found your silence, old man." He saluted and turned toward the valley, where dawn spilled over the pines. The war was over, but its echoes lived on in the hearts of those who still remembered what honor truly meant. In life, heroes don't always wear medals. They keep the world standing, one quiet act at a time. If this story moved you, take a moment to share it with someone who still believes in courage. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to Silent Valor to honor the ones who fought for peace. May your days be quiet, your heart's brave, and your home's safe.